Hello students. Today we'll study an important chapter from class 9 biology, the fundamental unit of life. Discovery of cell. Let us begin with the discovery of the cell. The story of the cell began in 1665 with a scientist named Robert Hooke. While observing a thin slice of cork under a microscope that he had built himself, he noticed many tiny box-like structures arranged closely together like a honeycomb. These structures reminded him of Cellular, the small rooms in which monks lived in monasteries. Inspired by this resemblance, he named them cells. In Latin, the word cell means a little room, but discovery was just the beginning. Later, two biologists, Schleiden and Schwann, presented the cell theory, stating that all plants and animals are composed of cells and that the cell is the basic unit of life. This theory was further expanded by Virchow, who suggested that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Now let us understand the most important concept of this chapter. What is a cell? All living organisms are made up of tiny units called cells. These cells are the basic building blocks of life. A cell is defined as the basic structural and functional unit of life. This means it is the structural unit because it forms the body of all living organisms. It is the functional unit because all vital life processes such as respiration, nutrition, and growth take place inside the cell. Unicellular and multicellular organisms. Living organisms can be classified into two main types based on the number of cells they have. First, unicellular organisms. These are made up of a single cell. This one cell performs all the basic life functions. Examples include amoeba, chlamydomonas, paramecium, and bacteria. Second, multicellular organisms. These are made up of many cells. In such organisms, different cells perform different functions. This is known as division of labor. Division of labor means that different cells or parts of the body carry out different functions. For example, in the human body, the heart pumps blood. The stomach digests food. The lungs help in breathing. Similarly, even inside a cell, different cell organelles perform specific functions. So, instead of one cell doing everything, the work is divided among different cells or parts, making the organism more efficient. Examples of multicellular organisms include some fungi, plants, and animals. An important point to remember is that every multicellular organism begins its life as a single cell, which then divides to form many cells. If we look at different organisms, we realize that cells are not all the same. They vary greatly in both their shape and their size. There is a very specific reason for this. The shape and size of a cell are directly related to the specific function it performs. In other words, a cell's look depends entirely on its job. Let's look at some examples. Some cells, like amoeba, do not have a fixed shape. They are irregular and keep changing their form, which allows them to move and capture food easily. On the other hand, many cells have a fixed and peculiar shape that is perfect for their specific role. One nerve cells. These are long and branched. This unique structure helps them act like wires to carry messages across long distances in the body. Two human body cells. If you look at the different cells in our own bodies like smooth muscle cells, blood cells, bone cells, or fat cells, each one has a distinct shape suited to its task. The reason for this variety is the division of labor. Just as different organs in our body do different things, like the heart pumping blood or the stomach digesting food, different cells, and even the small patist parts inside them, have their own special tasks to perform. Always remember that the shape of a cell is always related to the function it performs. This variety is what allows a complex organism to work so efficiently. Basic structure of a cell. Now, let's look at the basic organization of a cell. If we were to study a cell under a microscope, we would see three main features in almost every single one: the plasma membrane, the nucleus, and the cytoplasm. Think of these as the three essential parts that allow a cell to live and perform all its jobs. First, there is the plasma membrane. This is the outermost covering of the cell. It acts like a protective border that separates the contents of the cell from its external environment. Next, inside the cell, we find the cytoplasm. This is a jelly-like fluid that fills the space inside the membrane and houses many specialized structures called cell organelles. Finally, there is the nucleus. This is the control center of the cell. It directs all the activities and contains the information the cell needs to function. Everything that happens inside a cell, from breathing to getting energy, is possible because these three parts interact with each other and with the environment. Together, they form the basic structural organization that makes a cell the fundamental unit of life. The plasma membrane. Let's take a closer look at the plasma membrane, also known as the cell membrane. As we discussed, this is the outermost covering that holds the cell together and separates its contents from the outside world. The most important thing to know about this membrane is that it is selectively permeable. Think of it as a smart filter. It doesn't let everything through. It specifically allows or permits the entry and exit of some materials while preventing others from moving. This is how the cell maintains its internal balance. How do substances move across this membrane? They mainly use two processes: diffusion and osmosis. 1. Diffusion. This is the spontaneous movement of a substance from a region of high concentration to a region where its concentration is low. For example, gases like carbon dioxide, CO2, which is cellular waste, and oxygen, O2, move in and out of the cell through diffusion. 2. Osmosis. This is a specific type of diffusion that applies only to water. Osmosis is the movement of water molecules through a selectively permeable membrane from a region of high water concentration to a region of low water concentration. What happens to a cell in different solutions? Depending on the amount of water outside the cell, three things can happen. Hypotonic solution. If the medium surrounding the cell has a higher water concentration than the cell, meaning it's very dilute, water will move into the cell. As a result, the cell is likely to swell up. Isotonic solution. If the water concentration is exactly the same inside and outside, there is no net movement of water. The cell will stay the same size. Hypertonic solution. If the medium has a lower concentration of water than the cell, meaning it's very concentrated, water will leave the cell. This causes the cell to shrink. Whether it's a plant cell absorbing water through its roots or an amoeba taking in food, these processes are happening every second to keep the cell alive. The cell wall. While the plasma membrane is found in all cells, plant cells have something extra. In addition to the plasma membrane, plant cells have another rigid outer covering called the cell wall. It lies outside the plasma membrane and is mainly composed of cellulose. Cellulose is a complex substance that provides structural strength to plants, which is why trees and plants can stand tall and firm. One of the most important jobs of the cell wall is to protect the cell. When a plant cell takes in a lot of water through osmosis and swells up, the cell wall builds up pressure against the swollen cell. Because of this wall, plant cells can withstand much greater changes in the surrounding medium than animal cells can. There is also a very specific phenomenon described in our textbook called plasmolysis. Imagine a living plant cell losing water through osmosis. As the water leaves, the contents of the cell shrink and pull away from the cell wall. This process of the cell shrinking away from its outer wall is what we call plasmolysis. Remember, the cell wall is unique to plants and some fungi and bacteria. It's not just a container, it's a source of strength and protection that allows plants to survive in changing environments. Now, Let's move to the most important part of the cell, the nucleus. Think of it as the headquarters or the control center. The nucleus has a double-layered covering called the nuclear membrane. This membrane isn't a solid wall. It has tiny pores that allow materials to move in and out, connecting the nucleus with the cytoplasm. What is inside the nucleus? Inside, we find rod-shaped structures called chromosomes. These are only visible when the cell is about to divide. Chromosomes are very important because they contain information for the inheritance of features from parents to the next generation in the form of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Let's break that down simply. DNA molecules contain the information necessary for constructing and organizing the cell. Functional segments of DNA are called genes. When a cell is not dividing, this DNA is present as a tangled mass of thread-like structures called chromatin. Whenever the cell is about to divide, this chromatin organizes itself into those rod-shaped chromosomes. The nucleus plays a central role in cellular reproduction, the process by which a single cell divides and forms two new cells. By directing the chemical activities of the cell, the nucleus determines how the cell will develop and what form it will take when it matures. Whether it's passing on traits or deciding what the cell does next, the nucleus is the brain behind it all. The prokaryotic versus eukaryotic divide. Before we move on, there is a very important distinction you must know for your exams. Based on the complexity of the nucleus, cells are divided into two types, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes are primitive, simple cells like bacteria. Their nuclear region is poorly defined because it lacks a nuclear membrane. This undefined region, containing only nucleic acids, is called a nucleoid. Eukaryotes, like the cells in plants and animals, have a well-defined nucleus that is completely enclosed by a nuclear membrane. Remember, prokaryotes also lack most of the membrane-bound organelles we are about to discuss. Cytoplasm. Now, let's talk about the space that fills the cell, the cytoplasm. When we look at a slide of an onion peel or human cheek cells, we see a large region of each cell that takes up very little stain. This is the cytoplasm. It is the fluid content found inside the plasma membrane. Think of the cytoplasm as the living soup of the cell. It isn't just empty space. It contains many specialized structures called cell organelles. Each of these organelles performs a specific and vital function for the cell. In the textbook, you'll notice a key distinction. In eukaryotes, like us, the cytoplasm houses well-defined organelles enclosed by membranes. In prokaryotes, like bacteria, not only is the nuclear region undefined, but these membrane-bound organelles are also absent. The cytoplasm acts as the main arena for cellular activities. It is the site where many crucial chemical reactions take place, allowing the cell to maintain its life, grow, and function. The cytoplasm is the medium that supports the organelles and provides the environment for all the cell's internal work to happen. Cell organelles. Now we come to the specialized departments of the cell organelles. Just like a large city has different departments for power, waste, and transport, every cell has these membrane-bound structures to keep its complex chemical activities separate and organized. This is one of the main features that distinguishes complex eukaryotic cells from simpler prokaryotic ones. Let's look at the key organelles as described in our textbook. Endoplasmic reticulum. First, let's look at the endoplasmic reticulum or ER. It's a huge network of tubes and sheets that serves as a transport system. 1. RER means rough endoplasmic reticulum. It looks rough because ribosomes are attached to its surface. These ribosomes are the sites of protein manufacture. 2. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum. It helps in the manufacture of fat molecules or lipids, which are important for cell function. Some of these proteins and lipids help in building the cell membrane itself. This process of building the membrane is known as membrane biogenesis. The ER isn't just a factory, it's a construction crew that helps the cell grow and repair its own outer walls through membrane biogenesis. Golgi apparatus. Think of this as the packaging plant. It consists of a system of membrane-bound vesicles called cisterns. Its functions include the storage, modification, and packaging of products in vesicles. Lysosomes. These are the cell's waste disposal system. They contain powerful digestive enzymes capable of breaking down all organic material. They are known as suicide bags because if the cell gets damaged, the lysosome may burst and the enzymes will actually digest their own cell. Mitochondria. These are known as the powerhouses of the cell. They have two membrane coverings and create energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, molecules. Interestingly, they have their own DNA and ribosomes. Plastids. These are present only in plant cells. There are two types. First is chromoplasts, colored plastids, such as chloroplasts, which are vital for photosynthesis. And second is leucoplasts, white or colorless, which are primarily used for storing materials like starch, oils, and protein granules. Vacuoles. These are storage sacs for solid or liquid contents. In plant cells, vacuoles are very large and full of cell sap, which provides turgidity and rigidity to the cell. Each of these organelles has a very specific structure and a very specific job. Together, they allow the cell to perform all its functions, which is why the cell is called the functional unit of life. Cell division. Finally, let's look at how life continues and grows through cell division. New cells are constantly being produced in organisms to support growth, replace damaged or expired cells, and form the specialized cells required for life cycles. There are two main ways this happens: mitosis and meiosis. First is mitosis. This is the process of cell division for growth and maintenance. Most of the cells in an organism divide this way. In this process, each cell, the original cell, divides to form two identical resultant cells. These new cells have the same number of chromosomes as the original. This helps in the growth and repair of tissues throughout the body. Second is meiosis. This is a specific type of division used for life cycles. When organisms reproduce, specialized cells in the biological systems divide to form gametes, the reproductive cells. Meiosis involves two consecutive divisions. In this process, instead of two, it produces four new cells. These new cells have only half the number of chromosomes compared to the original cell. Think of it this way. Mitosis is for maintenance and growth, resulting in two identical cells, while meiosis is for starting new generations, resulting in four cells with half the chromosomes. And with that, we have completed our journey through the fundamental unit of life. By understanding the cell, you understand the foundation of all life. Final revision. Before we head to the exams, let's do a lightning fast revision of everything we've covered today. If you remember these 6 points, you've mastered the chapter. 1. The fundamental unit. The cell is the basic structural and functional unit of living organisms. It is where all life processes happen. 2. The gatekeeper. The plasma membrane is selectively permeable. It regulates the movement of materials in and out of the cell. 3. Transport. Remember the two main processes: diffusion for gases and osmosis for water movement. 4. The machinery. Cell organelles are not just parts, they are specialized structures. From the mitochondria, the powerhouse, to lysosomes, the waste disposal, each has a unique role. 5. The comparison. Plant cells are unique because of their cell wall and chloroplasts and their large central vacuoles. 6. The future. Cells divide to grow and reproduce. Mitosis makes two identical cells for growth, while meiosis makes four cells with half the chromosomes for reproduction.